Congressman Ron Paul says, I don't want to run your life. I don't want to run the economy. And I don't want to police the world. What kind of presidential candidate says that? Suddenly you are this hot candidate with kids. You're the most Googled. You're big on the internet. Do you know what that's about?
Not completely. I love it. I always thought freedom ideas were young ideas. You know, in history, freedom is a young idea. Tyranny is an old idea. Young people tend to be more principled, and they like that, and they know I've been dedicated to the principles of the Constitution, and they welcome the idea of somebody that talks about leaving them alone, letting them run their own lives.
And leaving people alone is not something I often hear politicians talk about.
That's sad, and I tell people the reasons I run for president not because of the things I want to do, but more because of the things I don't want to do. I don't want to run your life, and I don't want to run the economy, and I don't want to police the world.
But who's going to do it if you politicians don't do it?
That's what some people wondered. But you know, I think what's happened though is the failure of government is becoming more evident than ever before, especially in this country. You know, the failure of taking care of the victims of Katrina, the failure of the war, the bankruptcy of the Social Security system. The government hasn't protected us from lead in paints, you know, on and on. It just
So
goes on to just...
So more government, more protection?
Some people are arguing that, and of course I take the position that government interferes too often. We become complacent and depend on the government to protect us, and they fail, and they don't provide the services that they claim. You know, we've had the government involved in our medical care system since the early 70s. We've had managed care, and all of a sudden nobody's happy with it. So now the choice is, did we have too much government, or do we need, you know, a single payer? Should we move toward a socialized system, or should we look to the marketplace to help us sort out the problems we have in medicine? My argument, of course, is always looking for the answers in the free market, in private choices, and individuals dealing with those problems, rather than depending on the state, which generally will support maybe the special interests. Like today, too many corporations benefit from our medical care system.
You oppose government funding for health insurance for poor children. This makes you alone in politics, just about.
That's right, and I think there'd be less poor children needing help if we had endorsed the ideas that I'm talking about. I was in medicine before government was involved, and you know, there were a lot of poor people, and there were a lot of church hospitals. I worked in a church hospital partially for experience and partially to work in an emergency room, and I was paid $3 an hour in the early 1960s, but there was no government insurance. But everybody got taken care of, you know, and then nobody was charged. But now today they come in and everybody's charged the maximum amount of money, or they're put on to the roll. The government will pay it, put them on Medicaid, and jack the bill up. I mean, the attitudes are completely different.
Before government got involved, people stepped forward and took care of poor people.
Absolutely.
Now we expect government to do it.
We expect government to do it, and about all it does is when the government gets involved, say in education or medicine, instead of increasing the quality of the care or the education or spreading it, it pushes prices up. So the quality of education and medicine has gone down. Less people are getting the benefits, but look at where the prices have gone up the most. It's in the areas where the government is most involved.
It's hard for people to imagine how the care could be given without government once you're used to government. But you're an obstetrician. In your own practice, you don't take Medicaid or Medicare. How do people pay for it?
Never did. Sometimes they'll pay a small fee. Sometimes they would pay nothing. And that's the way I was taught. You know, there's a hospital in my district in Galveston, Texas, and it's called the Shriners Hospital. It's well known. It's a burn hospital. And if you don't have any money, and you can go there, whether you're a child or an adult, you can be taken care of. And if you can pay, you pay. If not, you'll still be taken care of. So you would have a lot more solutions like that. The society and the economy would be so much richer.
We'd be richer because government wouldn't be taking 40% of the money in taxes?
That's right. I wouldn't have an income tax. I wouldn't be taxing people to run the educational system or running the medical system.
This is hard for people to imagine. Medicare, free medicine for people your age. How can elderly people be taken care of without a big government program like that?
Right now it's difficult because we've made a whole generation or two dependent. But the question that we ought to ask is, if we continue to do what we do, how are we going to finance it? Fewer people going into the workforce, cost of medicine going up. There's no funding for Medicare. It's under a greater threat than Social Security.
The promises being made now are not going to be kept. Promises of free health care for elderly people.
No, they can't. Of course, there's no such thing as free health care. And I think I have the only solution. People see me as a threat to Social Security and Medicare, but I think I'm the only one that has a real solution, because I've never voted to spend any money out of the Social Security Trust Fund, because I voted against all those appropriations.
Your party created a prescription drug program. You voted against it. Don't elderly people need these drugs?
Yeah, and that's why I voted against it, because their government programs fail to work. And a lot of elderly were, and still are, furious over that program because it's so complex and difficult.
But a lot of people like it.
Yeah,
hey, I'm getting my drugs paid for. They're free.
You know who else likes it? The drug companies. They spent quite a few millions of dollars down there. They did the highest lobbying, so the profiteers were the ones who really pushed that program. But the assumption shouldn't be made that if you didn't have it, people wouldn't get, their drugs. There are other ways. The market is designed, if you follow the market, to lower prices, not raise prices.
You vote against all this stuff. Don't your colleagues hate you?
No, I'd like to think subtly that maybe they respect me a little bit. It's because every once in a while they'll come up and say, I wished I could get away with what you do. But, I think people in my district, and hopefully in this campaign, and I'm running now, that people will respect these views and come around to understanding the economics. And I think that is what's happening. I think people are realizing this country is bankrupt and we have to do something. It's not working, so they're looking for some solutions.
Generally, adherence to a healthy lifestyle pattern has decreased during the last 18 years. Obesity is up, exercise is down, and eating just 5 servings of fruits and veggies a day dropped like a rock. And we didn't start out that great to begin with. Guess what percentage of Americans at the turn of the century had the following 4 healthy lifestyle characteristics: not smoking, not overweight, 5 servings of fruits and veggies, and exercising a half hour a day, at least 5 days a week? 3%. And whether people were wealthy, college-educated, no subgroup even remotely met clinical or public health recommendations. Where are people falling down the most? If you look at heart disease risk factors, most people don't smoke, shown here in green. About half are exercising, but check out the healthy diet score, which gives folks points for drinking less than 4 cups of soda a week, for example. On a scale of 0 to 5, only about 1% score a 4 or a 5. So the American Heart Association's aggressive 2020 target to improve that by 20% would bring us up to like 1.2% of men and women. Given that we've known for decades that advanced coronary artery disease may be present by age 20, coronary atherosclerosis often even present in young children, it is particularly disturbing that healthy lifestyle choices are declining rather than improving in the U.S. And it shows. In terms of life expectancy, the U.S. is down around 27 or 28 out of the 34 OECD free market democracies. The people of Slovenia live a year longer than citizens of the United States. Why? Well, according to the most rigorous analysis of risk factors ever published, the #1 cause of death and disability in the United States is our diet. What about our diet is so bad? The worst 5 things about our diet is that we don't eat enough fruit, we don't eat enough nuts and seeds, we eat too much salt, too much bacon, hot dogs, lunch meat, etc., and not enough vegetables. That's based on Data like this on diet quality and chronic disease mortality risk that found that those scoring higher using a variety of different systems that all agreed on more whole plant foods reduced the risk of dying from heart disease, cancer, and all causes of death combined. There's now an overwhelming body of clinical and epidemiological evidence illustrating the dramatic impact of a healthy lifestyle on reducing all-cause mortality and preventing chronic diseases such as coronary heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and cancer. So why do we eat so bad? I mean, aren't we scared of dying from some of these horrible chronic diseases? It's almost as if we're eating as though our future didn't matter. And there's actually data to back that up. Death row nutrition. The growing macabre fascination with speculating about one's last meal offers a window into one's true consumption desires when one values the future, basically when one's value of the future is discounted close to zero. Right? If the future didn't matter, what would we eat? Well, in contrast to pop culture anecdotes, this group of Cornell researchers actually created a catalog of actual last meals, the final food requests of 247 individuals executed in the United States during a recent 5-year period. The most commonly made request, meat. The researchers go out of their way to note, tofu never made the list. And no one asked for vegetarian. In fact, if you compare the last meals to what Americans normally eat, there's not much difference. If we continue to eat as though they were our last meals, eventually they will be.
Renewed hostile actions against United States ships on the high seas and the Gulf of Tonkin have today required me to order the military forces of the United States to take action in reply.
Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
Senator Kennedy has been shot. Is that possible? He still has the gun. The gun is pointed at the tree at this moment. Take a hold of his thumb and break it if you have to. We were we had an explosion, and we are defending immediately. Let's fail this.
People calling themselves members of the Weather Underground last night planted bombs in federal office buildings in Washington and Oakland, California.
They took the babies out of the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
Survivors of the USS Liberty are demanding a congressional investigation into what happened, an acknowledgement that the Israeli Air Force bombed a U.S. intelligence Navy ship.
The death of bin Laden marks the most significant achievement to date in our nation's effort to defeat al-Qaeda.
The Taliban is taking responsibility for shooting down a U.S. helicopter. More than 30 people were killed, and there are reports this morning that most of them are U.S. Navy SEALs.
There may be a false flag incident where some ship goes down and you be used for the excuse to accelerate the next war.
If there's one thing that has unified Democrats and Republicans, and everybody in between, it's that we all hated the bank bailout.
The Department of Homeland Security is apparently on a huge ammo buying spree.
It comes out to like 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition.
Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people.
They estimated that they would have to eliminate 25 million people in these re-education centers. And when I say eliminate, I mean kill.
I'm here to warn people. You keep telling me to shut up. This isn't a game.
From the front lines of the information war, it's Alex Jones.
It's FEMA's job, since they were set up in 1979 by the outgoing Jimmy Carter, to deal with continuity of government, nuclear war, emergencies, earthquakes, man-made natural disasters. So they're always preparing for biological pandemics, mass graves, you name it. In fact, Aaron Dykes wrote an article like 3 years ago that made national news with the headline that states prepare mass graves. And then we show the state documents with the phone numbers. In fact, will you guys print me that? Just states prepare for mass graves pandemic, Aaron Dykes, Infowars.com. That should pull it up if you put the Infowars.com in. Because before I get to Paul Watson's article, and Paul's a great guy, my best writer, my most prolific. But so many times we will take something and then dial it back because we don't want to sound sensational. If it is sensational, it is sensational. And then you should report it. So many times in history, incredibly bad things happen because people can't believe something amazing is happening, either amazingly good or amazingly bad. So many people have something wonderful drop in their laps, and they will self-destructively destroy themselves to sabotage it, not believing that they could be successful. But they did find the actual article. Let's throw it back up there. There's the Aaron Dykes article from JonesReport.com, a site we don't really update anymore, but we intend to down the road. Plans for mass graves confirmed. Government surveying cemetery readiness for flu outbreak. Print me that again. Thank you. And then I'm going to have Watson add that to his article because I ended up editing here on air. And I have the guys correct me on air as well. We're all helping each other. We're all correcting each other. We're trying to get it right. And, you know, his article isn't scary enough. His article isn't bad enough. His article needs to get people concerned so that we can have a debate about this and hopefully stop whatever's coming, or at least be individually prepared for it. Because it's not my job to scare you, but when something is scary, it's not my job to say, is FEMA preparing for a pandemic? Question mark. Federal agency seeks 40-yard dumpsters for biomedical waste disposal during emergency. Well, I mean, they're preparing mass graves. They're preparing forced inoculations. They're preparing under InfraGard, lockdowns, under clergy response teams. The church is saying, take your inoculations, go to the campus of the Lord. That's on the news. I could play TV clips with them reporting it like it's a good thing. Here's the article. I'm going to have this added to Paul Watson's report. The headline is, FEMA accelerates or expands preparation for biological pandemic. Or medical waste could be for a civil war. You know, what they need for a bunch of dead military and police. The point is they're expanding across the board, and their main mission is letting the foreign globalist offshore crime syndicate take over this country. But here it is. Plans for mass graves confirmed. Government surveying cemetery readiness for flu outbreak. And how to bury millions in Illinois, Indiana, New York. That's just 3 states we got documents from. We had one emergency manager on from Indiana near Chicago, you know, close to the border with Illinois, where they wanted to be ready to bury 3 million people on county property in the Indiana area, county, unnamed county. People didn't believe it, so then I got a bunch of documents sent to me by state insiders and funeral homes and folks that own the cemeteries who got the letters saying prepare. And we've got copies of those with phone numbers if you'd like to. So is FEMA preparing for pandemic? Do great white sharks eat seals? Do elephants have long curly trunks and little tails? I don't know. Does the Easter Bunny leave eggs outside for the children? The point is that we're going to get into that and a lot more. Big show lined up for you today.
Hello, this is Hank Hill, and I'm telling you what, you need to listen to Alex Jones.
Yeah. Infowars.com.
I judge, what is the secret of the universe?
Infowars.com.
It is the 40th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, and we have 55 million with an M dead children in this country since then. And you notice basically every other freedom and liberty is also dying or dead right now at the very, very same time. So coming up in the next hour, I'm going to open the phones up specifically for a discussion of abortion, whether you're for it, against it, whether you agree with me, disagree, whether you have your own stories to tell. But I look at my 3 children, and I think about the fact that they could have been aborted. I could have legally gone and killed them. Or my wife could have legally gone and killed them. And I imagine the world without them and all the joy they've brought me and how I have a love for them that transcends that for my father, my mother, my wife. It is the strongest love out there. And just even imagining them in distress or imagining them being slaves or imagining them living under this tyranny breaks my heart. And for people that don't love, they don't know what it means to have your heart broken. It's when you feel broken inside. It is a constant pain when people that you love die, and then every time you remember them, the heartbrokenness comes back. But there is an emptiness in love that's also fulfilling. It's better to have loved and lost than never have loved at all. And love is the secret in the world. It's what ties us all together. It's what binds us, those of us that love goodness. And that doesn't mean that those of us that love goodness are wimps or that we have a narrow vision. I have a wide vision into evil and into corruption. I understand it as well. And I understand worldliness, and I understand hatred. I understand avarice. I understand will to power. I understand the ideas of dominance. And certainly when you're young and immature, those things are more attractive, but they become less and less attractive. So that when I have to defeat somebody or dominate somebody in righteousness, I don't take a pleasure in it. It is more a mechanical function, and I'm more effective at it not being as emotional. But I do fall back into emotionalism on a routine basis, and we have emotions for a reason. We're meant to get angry. We're meant to hate evil. But my love of the innocent is so much stronger that it is just a whole universe of my being compared to the reservoir of hate and evil that is also in my heart. But then again, I'm beginning to attempt to wax poetic here today. Wow, this is one of those days where I am just absolutely overwhelmed by the amount of news that we've got here. I just mentioned this in the last segment. FEMA is preparing for mass pandemic, buying giant dumpsters to put, quote, medical waste. You know, we know they've bought coffins and prepared mass graves. And if you want to see the proof of that, we have an article from 2009, Infowars.com, that I've had added to Paul Watson's new article that's out today. Plans for mass graves confirmed. Government surveying cemetery readiness for flu outbreak and tens of millions dead. And that's ongoing. But, you know, we don't just have one article about FEMA gearing up today and then move on to another. We then also connect it back to some of the back knowledge. In fact, let's put that article back up with the headline there for folks. And then let's click on some of those documents, actually, so folks can see that are watching us on television at prisonplanet.tv and InfoWarsNews.com. And there you can see the Bureau of Cemeteries out of New York and the director of it saying prepare for millions of dead and mass graves. And, of course, we got these documents from Indiana, Illinois, New York, Arizona, and others when people were in denial about our FEMA preparing mass graves report, which FEMA was involved in. And they put out a big disinfo piece in the news saying that that was not true and not the case, and that the coffin liners had a dual purpose. Well, of course they have a dual purpose. The military training for urban warfare and gun confiscation domestically can be used in Macedonia or Iraq or Libya or anywhere else. But they're also training domestically on record to confiscate our guns. They've ordered to do so under Presidential Decision Directive 51 and others. And it's declassified and leaked 50-plus different ways or more. Army Times, Associated Press, Infowars.com. In the last 6 years, that preparation is being accelerated. So I'm sick of the denial and, oh, it's that crazy guy, Alex Jones. You know, he thinks the government's gearing up for martial law. We're already in a form of martial law in this country. So up on Infowars.com right now, let me just mention some of these headlines, and then I will get into all the other news. FEMA accelerates preparations for pandemic. Report TSA threatens to put man on list over parody video. I'm going to be getting to that. There's actual audio of this up on the site. Cynical new PR stunt greases skids for humanitarian invasion of Syria. Very important new hoax, just like the chemical weapons attack hoax has now been not double, triple, quadruple, but the UN, all the inspectors, even this week, new documents came out yesterday that it was totally launched by the Syrian rebels funded by Bandar Bush, Prince Bandar out of Saudi Arabia. Same one launching terror attacks all over Russia right now. Here's another one. How dare they invite Iran to the Syrian peace conference? Yes, there's a big freak out about that. Again, we're going to get into the $23 trillion credit bubble in China that's starting to collapse and may signal the next major global financial crisis. And then there's another story that says U.S. Army elite special forces train with local cops in secretive joint exercise. That's outside Fort Bragg, and normally when there's an urban warfare training drill, we've gone out to many of these and documented that it's to acclimate the public, to prepare the general population for martial law, that it is a militarization of police program to condition everyone to accept it, and that's now on record. In this particular case, I think it's important to report on it, but it's part of a program they've had since the 40s for Special Forces qualification graduations. And they've got different ones, the SAGE program and others, but that's what this is. And they've had cases where police have actually killed Special Forces trainees because the Special Forces trainees think that they're supposed to subdue a cop in a drill, but the cop isn't part of the drill and kills them. It was a case like 5 years ago where the cop shot and killed 2 of them who were trying to disarm him. They thought he was the guy part of the drill. He had just pulled somebody over at the designated spot where it was supposed to happen 10 minutes later. A case of the wrong place at the wrong time, and 2 guys in camo with their faces blacked out, you know, with green paint on them, ran up to disarm him, and, well, it was more of an exercise than they were ready for, a tragedy. What's happening in the Fort Bragg area there in the Carolinas is part of a normal drill. But the problem is that in other areas, this has been used to blur the lines, and they have expanded it. So there's that report. Now, let me get into all the serious news here. If you're watching me on TV, document cam, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 stacks, okay? Some of these stacks are 20 articles thick. And we're going to skip this network break because I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to finally succeed. I've never succeeded in almost 19 years on air. I guess it's 19 years now, starting this year. I'm going to read just the top headlines and move on. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right now. Organic food shortages hit U.S. Party sees on abortion issue in midterm race. I am overwhelmed by 55 million babies killed since Roe v. Wade. Life News. Top story on DrudgeReport.com. Continuing, Thai government declares state of emergency as protests drag on. Russian police kill terrorist suspect in Winter Olympic security crackdown. After collapse, 6 likely events that will follow an economic crash. I definitely need to pull that and cover that. NSA sets goal tread for surveillance, Human Rights Watch. Hostility in the high seas, Iran sends warships to Atlantic Ocean in historic first. I mean, I've just read a few articles out of hundreds, folks. I mean, this is insane. Geithner warned S&P chairman U.S. would retaliate for downgrade. London barman attempts citizens' arrest on ex-UK PM Blair over Iraq war crimes. There's video. 68 expect NSA phone spying to stay the same or increase. You know, I think they know what's going on. Privacy tools used by 28% of the online world, research finds. Sorry, liberals. Martin Luther King Jr. believed in Second Amendment rights. Ooh, I got to cover that one. See, I already saw these headlines, but I've just got to get to all this. There's so much. I don't even have time to cover this whole stack. Here, let me just go to another one here. This is really important on the economic front right here. U.S. debt up $1,608,304 for each baby born the year Obama took office. So children born that year all individually owe over $1,600,000. According to the globalists who signed us on to all their own debt. Oh, see, I'm now breaking my rule. Who are the new middle class around the world? You'd be surprised how poor they are. Yes, under new middle class standards, under Agenda 21, you will make $4 to $13 a day and will be considered elite. So get ready, but you will have a smartphone that tracks everything you do. That'll be subsidized. Your own little microwaving spy droid. Spain's worst year for work leaves Rajoy counting cost as they go under the New World Order. The 23 trillion credit bubble in China is starting to collapse. Financial crisis next. If he was around today, Thomas Jefferson would be considered a Tea Party extremist. 20 quotes. We'll see if we can get to that today. That is just some of the news on that front. And I'm not even covering the top stuff yet. I'm just going over the stacks here to show you what I'm dealing with here. Oh, my goodness. This is unbelievable. This is absolutely unbelievable. Let me just continue here with some of the other news. Optimism and positive outlook seems to help people stay healthier as they age. Washington Post, Financial Times, red wine and chocolate could fight type 2 diabetes, research warns. That's why Bloomberg wants to restrict them. See, all their, quote, health food moves are meant to restrict healthy food that you're allowed to get or to just tax food in general. Like they don't say what fats are bad, like trans fats. They just say all fats are bad, even though your brain needs them. Sitting at work for hours can be as unhealthy as smoking. No kidding, CBS News. That's just some of the news on that front I'll get more into. Let's move on to this stack. Bill Gates sees almost no poor countries left by 2035. Yeah, because they're going to be reducing population worldwide and claiming that you're not poor if you make $4 a day. See, they just changed definitions. Fugitive U.S. leaker Snowden fears for his life after open U.S. senators and intelligence officials call for his murder and his death. Murder, death, killed. White House drug czar contradicts Obama on marijuana. Says that marijuana is much stronger today and basically needs to stay illegal. Doesn't matter. You guys just want to keep it illegal so you can get a cut off the money in the black market. The other government agencies know they'll make more money taxing it, and that's why there's a bureaucratic battle. I say decriminalize it because people are going to smoke their brains anyways. That's their problem, not my problem. I don't need to be pulled over and asked if I've got Mary Jane on me because some idiot wants to smoke a bunch of it and sit there and live in their mom's basement all day. And I know all pot smokers don't do that, but do not tell me that marijuana isn't a powerful hallucinogen in the psychotropic class and knocks you on your hind end now, most of it. And then that's why Soros is promoting it. You can smoke your dope, and I say decriminalize it and legalize it and regulate it, but doesn't mean I got to endorse it. Amazon plans to ship customers packages before they even order them, literally predicting the future. And I've told you this is the future of everything, and it's going to wreck society, folks. I'm going to be breaking that down coming up. Report, Microsoft planning and paying YouTubers for positive Xbox coverage. Yeah, of course. Inside secret Chinese camps curing internet addiction. And as much as I don't like the Chinese re-education camps, internet addiction is a very serious phenomenon in children especially, and is reprogramming their brains and screwing them up. But you cannot stop parents, particularly women in the studies, giving their kids smartphones and letting them live on them. Because they're addicted too. This is the takedown of society. Also, the coming GOP amnesty push sellout. We're going to be breaking that down. Also, Mark Dice, this is up on Infowars.com, got Californians to take bottled water imported from Fukushima that's radioactive, and they took it and thought it was good. We're going to be playing that video today. We got a lot of videos coming up on the transmission. Again, I'm just giving you what's in some of the top of the stacks, okay? I'm going to go back into all this in detail. Glenn Beck to the New York Governor Cuomo. Are our tax dollars not welcome here as well? Pro-lifers, conservatives, gun owners, you're not welcome. They don't care if everything collapses. That's what they want. They want to say we're a cult and you're not welcome. We're open and liberal. That's why we don't tolerate anybody having views different than ours, because we're authoritarians. But it's okay because we have the moral high ground because we said we did, because, Andrew Cuomo's a known gangster along with his thug dad, Mario Cuomo, who hangs out at Bilderberg meetings. I mean, these are scum of the earth thugs. But they're going to tell you what you eat, what you do, how much salt you have, how big your soft drink is. They're going to tell you parents aren't parents, the state's God. They're going to tell you you can't own guns, but they got bodyguards. I'm talking about Bloomberg and Cuomo. And then they're going to tell you, get out of the state. Get out of the state if you don't like killing babies. Get out of the state if you don't want to pay for it with your tax money. Get out of the state, Catholic Church, if you don't want to pay for abortions inside the institution. And just like they've infiltrated the Catholic Church with all the pedophiles, that's what's going on in the public schools. And they're going, let us teach your 5-year-old how to have anal sex or how to do things I can't even mention on air. Let us teach your 6-year-old how to masturbate. You're like, well, that's pedophilia. Oh, homophobe, arrest them. Putin's absolutely right when he comes out and says, gay people are welcome at the Olympics. By the way, I don't report on this and say this because I have something against, quote, gay people. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of not being able to watch any TV show without being bombarded with sexual propaganda constantly. I'm tired of the agenda. And it is really causing a backlash in me, somebody who's never, put it on my radar. And somebody who's not obsessed with it. Because there are people that are definitely latent homosexuals that are obsessed with it all day. We all know that's going on. I don't judge any of these people. But here's the deal. You keep your hands off our kids. And Putin said this. He said, do not come trying to parade it in front of kids. Do not try to sell the agenda. And that's what it is. It is indoctrination because the militant, homosexual, liberal, commie, eugenics agenda on record, ladies and gentlemen, cannot reproduce. And so they get their kids from CPS kids that are taken. That's on record. And I'm tired of being hunted. I'm tired of being food. Because, that's all it is. We have a predatory society and gangs, whether it's bad police groups or bad military groups in history or bad bureaucracies or bad street-level gangs. When society starts collapsing, people get into gangs. And I don't like when I'm in a restaurant that has a bar in it and you're out in the countryside and the local country boy mob shows up who doesn't even own cattle and doesn't, don't even know how to, all hat and no cattle or whatever, and they show up and are acting tough in the bar trying to start fights. I'm not against people that have cowboy hats and have a ranch and drive a Ford F-150. I'm that guy, literally. I just don't wear the cowboy hat. But when I see the townspeople, it's always the towns guys that want to come in and start a fight in the bar, I then don't like fake rednecks. You understand that? It's the same thing with gay people. I don't like the fact that there's this whole thing, kiss in front of everybody, in front of kids, go to neighborhood areas and do this, shove it in your face. I wouldn't like being in a restaurant and a heterosexual couple gets up and starts kissing in front of my kids, all because it's being done on purpose to get attention and to take over my mind and dominate me. And we all know immature people that do that. Hey, get a room. Go crazy. Just do not sit there and throw it in my face. I've got stuff going on in my mind. I'm talking to somebody. I don't want you to dominate what I'm doing. You want to tune into my radio show, do it. You want somebody to listen to you, go get a radio show. Go get a TV show. And we'll see if people want to watch you. We'll see if they want to listen to you. What it is losers that want to force their agenda, period. And it could be anything. It's like the South Park deal on motorcycle gangs. A lot of motorcycle people are great folks. I like them. Pro-gun, pro-liberty. But we all know the thug wannabe gangster type. We all know the thug culture types. Most of the real criminal motorcycle gangs aren't out stirring up trouble. They're making money. But the wannabe criminal outlaw motorcycle gangs, the 1%ers, the 3%ers, whatever you want to call them, they're the type of people that will literally go around into a nice resort area and try to intimidate families sitting around eating lunch with their family. Because they're mentally ill scum that want to go push people around. That's who fills the government now. That's who fills tyranny now. That's who fills the sails of the ship of tyranny. And it's a mindset, and it's a gangster mindset, and it's a gang mindset. It's a gang mentality. Read a law enforcement gang handbook, or go research, go buy a book, or go to the library and get a book or an online book on gang psychology. And then look around you. It's gang psychology everywhere because humans are meant to be in tribes. We're meant to be in gangs. But by having the image of a gang being bad thugs that are mean and pushy, they've taken over society. We're supposed to have gangs that are in the Bill of Rights, Constitution, the family, private property, pro-life, being upstanding, having a good name, and that everyone wants to do business with you. Everyone wants to work with you. Everyone wants to be around you. And you create civilizations of honor and dignity and working together. And then the criminals are displaced and finally destroyed and pushed out to the total edges of society and are jokes But Hollywood and the culture on purpose has glorified criminals of all types, and that's the gangster culture that's taking over. Now listen, I did the best I've ever done in 19 years on air. I realize it's 19 years next month. 19 years on air, and I just covered a big blitz of news, but that's nothing. I only covered maybe 10% of it. Now I'm going to look at what I already covered. I'm going to pick 4 or 5 things I think are most important, and then I'm going to come back on the other side and cover that bunch of audio and video clips.
There's a chart I saw recently that I can't get out of my head. A Harvard business professor and economist asked more than 5,000 Americans how they thought wealth was distributed in the United States. This is what they said they thought it was. Dividing the country into 5 rough groups of the top, bottom, and middle 3 20% groups, they asked people how they thought the wealth in this country was divided. Then he asked them what they thought was the ideal distribution, and 92%, that's at least 9 out of 10 of them, said it should be more like this. In other words, more equitable than they think it is. Now that fact is telling, admittedly, the notion that most Americans know that the system is already skewed unfairly. But what's most interesting to me is the reality compared to our perception. The ideal is as far removed from our perception of reality as the actual distribution is from what we think exists in this country. So ignore the ideal for a moment. Here's what we think it is again. And here is the actual distribution. Shockingly skewed. Not only do the bottom 20% and the next 20%, the bottom 40% of Americans barely have any of the wealth. I mean, it's hard to even see them on the chart. But the top 1% has more of the country's wealth than 9 out of 10 Americans believe the entire top 20% should have. Mind-blowing. But let's look at it another way, because I find this chart kind of difficult to wrap my head around. Instead, let's reduce the 311 million Americans to just a representative 100 people. Make it simple. Here they are: teachers, coaches, firefighters, construction workers, engineers, doctors, lawyers, some investment bankers, a CEO, maybe a celebrity or two. Now let's line them up according to their wealth. Poorest people on the left, wealthiest on the right, just a steady row of folks based on their net worth. We'll color code them like we did before based on which 20% quintile they fall into. Now let's reduce the total wealth of the United States, which was roughly $54 trillion in 2009, to this symbolic pile of cash. And let's distribute it among our 100 Americans. Well, here's socialism, all the wealth of the country distributed equally. We all know that won't work. We need to encourage people to work and work hard to achieve that good old American dream and keep our country moving forward. So, here's that ideal we asked everyone about. Something like this curve. This isn't too bad. We've got some incentive, as the wealthiest folks are now about 10 to 20 times better off than the poorest Americans. But hey, even the poor folks aren't actually poor, since the poverty line has stayed almost entirely off the chart. We have a super healthy middle class with a smooth transition into wealth. And yes, Republicans and Democrats alike chose this curve. 9 out of 10 people, 92%, said this was a nice, ideal distribution of America's wealth. But let's move on. This is what people think America's wealth distribution actually looks like. Not as equitable, clearly, but for me, even this still looks pretty great. Yes, the poorest 20 to 30% are starting to suffer quite a lot compared to the ideal, and the middle class is certainly struggling more than they were, while the rich and wealthy are making roughly 100 times that of the poorest Americans, and about 10 times that of the still healthy middle class. Sadly, this isn't even close to the reality. Here is the actual distribution of wealth in America. The poorest Americans don't even register. They're down to pocket change, and the middle class is barely distinguishable from the poor. In fact, even the rich between the top 10 and 20 percentile are worse off. Only the top 10% are better off. And how much better off? So much better off that the top 2 to 5% are actually off the chart at this scale. And the top 1%, this guy, well, his stack of money stretches 10 times higher than we can show. Here's his stack of cash, restacked, all by itself. This is the top 1% we've been hearing so much about. So much green in his pockets that I have to give him a whole new column of his own because he won't fit on my chart. 1% of America has 40% of all the nation's wealth. The bottom 80%, 8 out of every 10 people, or 80 out of these 100, only has 7% between them. And this has only gotten worse in the last 20 to 30 years. While the richest 1% take home almost a quarter of the national income today, in 1976 they took home only 9%, meaning their share of income has nearly tripled in the last 30 years. The top 1% own half the country's stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. The bottom 50% of Americans own only 0.5% of these investments, which means they aren't investing. They're just scraping by. I'm sure many of these wealthy people have worked very hard for their money. But do you really believe that the CEO is working 380 times harder than his average employee? Not his lowest paid employee, not the janitor, but the average earner in his company. The average worker needs to work more than a month to earn what the CEO makes in 1 hour. We certainly don't have to go all the way to socialism to find something that is fair for hardworking Americans. We don't even have to achieve what most of us consider might be ideal. All we need to do is wake up and realize that the reality in this country is not at all what we think it is.
Soon there will be 700 beds for treating Ebola patients in Monrovia. But medical staff are among the first victims, and in the Liberian capital, half of the health centres are shut and just one hospital is functioning. Many of the city's inhabitants, pregnant women, children suffering from malnutrition or malaria, and road casualties, are without access to medical care. How can they be provided with the care they so badly need? For MSF, this question takes on a whole different meaning when health workers themselves are at risk of becoming infected.
The issue of disease control exists at all levels, whether in Ebola treatment centers, regular health centers, or during mass distributions of antimalarial drugs. So this includes flow of patients, or when people come for their hygiene kits and mustn't have any physical contact with the person distributing the kit, hand washing, and during all the stages in the treatment process. Disease control is absolutely crucial.
De la prise en charge, de contrôle infectieux et de premier ordre. For Médecins Sans Frontières, the next step is a mass distribution of anti-malarial drugs, which hasn't been done before. The first symptoms of malaria resemble those of Ebola, and patients are struggling to get treatment, while malaria too continues to kill in West Africa.
MSF has a primary healthcare project in Pamat, and Pamat is a small location in Awil North County in northern Bargaza in South Sudan. It's supporting 11 IDP camps. The first primary cause of morbidity in our areas, especially at this point in time, is malaria, which I would say currently would amount for up to 80% of OPD consultations at times, and maybe 60%, so the range is between 60 and 80%. In the recent past, we have been stretched to limits. We have been compelled to recruit more members of staff. We have been compelled to seek for more supplies in terms of medicines, and still we are doing our best, but this does not reach the ones who are very, very interior, in places that have been locked out because of flooding. Some cannot be able to walk, so such people who can't be able to reach in our facility are locked out, and we don't know what usually happens to them because we have not seen them. But we have rumors and reports from members of the public of people who are very far, and they would require these services, but the services are not there for them. It's very, very discouraging sometimes to receive people who are very sick, and they are sick with the diseases that we can treat, but they come in late stages. So one of the most discouraging things we find is that people come in terminal stages, and we have lost lives because people are coming when they are very sick. If MSF was not here today, then 100+ patients with malaria that is treatable couldn't be treated. So this is the picture. So take it every day like that, then we would be having a big public health crisis in this place.
It's a disaster. Can never work. She wants to try and get it done, Hillary. She wants to try and save it. It can't be saved. It was no good from day one. It'll never be any good. We have to help our vets immediately. We have to secure the border. Drugs are pouring across, forgetting even about the people that are coming in illegally. Drugs are pouring across our border. People in places like North Carolina and New Hampshire, you can buy drugs, you can buy heroin for less than candy. And kids are buying it for less than candy. And what's happening to those communities and those states and our whole country, our children, our kids are being poisoned with drugs. We're going to secure the border. We have to build up, we have to immediately start with our very depleted military. We have jets that are so old they don't even make the parts for them anymore, Brett. There's so many things to do, but I would start by we have to get health care in line. If you look at a great place like Arizona, 116% increase in premiums. 116%. People are going bankrupt trying to pay for health care. And by the way, the health care is no good because deductibles are so high, you can't use it. So it's a tremendous problem. And Gruber, Jonathan Gruber, the architect, the wise guy, who said the American people are stupid, well, he's going to find out they're not stupid.
Governor Pence, I mean, you know that the window is fairly short in a new administration to be able to get things moving. On that list that Mr. Trump just mentioned, in the first 100 days, how do you kind of get all that stuff going?
Well, the first thing we do is we make sure that Donald Trump is the next president of the United States. And then we re-elect Republican majorities in the House and Senate. What you have here is a leader. And he's cast a vision to make America great again by rebuilding our military, getting this economy moving again, not with the tax increases that Hillary Clinton's advocating, but by cutting taxes across the board, repealing Obamacare, having the kind of trade deals that are negotiated in a way that puts the American worker first, and having the kind of appointments to the Supreme Court that will uphold our Constitution in the tradition of the late Justice Antonin Scalia. All that takes is new leadership in the White House, renewed leadership on Capitol Hill. And I promise you, having gotten to know this man over the last 3 months, the energy and the leadership that he's going to provide is going to change the direction of Washington, D.C. and our country quicker than you could possibly imagine.
One of the top issues in our list that is not talked about a lot is education. From a Trump-Pence ticket, what is the education system look like? Well, we talk about it a lot. Number one, choice. We're going to give choice because that's really needed, and really needed in the inner cities where there essentially is no education. If you want to know the truth, it's horrible. And number one. Number two, we're going to end Common Core. Common Core is a total disaster, and we're going to bring education local. What we have right now is crazy. It's being run out of Washington, D.C. by bureaucrats, many of whom don't care. They just get big fat checks. And you look at where our education is worldwide, Brett. Our education is so bad. It's so bad. Now, we're number one in one thing, cost per pupil. By far, we blow everyone away. As far as the quality of the education, we're 28 and 29. You take a list of 30, we're 28 and 29. You have Sweden, you have Denmark, you have Norway, you have China, you have Japan. You have countries that are spending much less money and doing a much better job. So we would end Common Core, bring education local.
One of the very first things Donald Trump and I talked about was his belief that education is a state and local function. Ending Common Core is born of that principle, but his passion to give parents the ability to choose where their children go to school regardless of their income, their area code, I think is an idea whose time has come. I think the best quality he has is he's someone who's very impatient with failure.
Also on this list is climate change. If you're a millennial who thinks that climate change is a problem and believes the scientists who say it is, why would you vote for a Trump-Pence ticket?
Because we want clean air, we want safety, and we want clean water, crystal clean water. But we can't give hundreds of billions of dollars away to groups that we don't even know where the money is going. It's crazy. And our businesses can't compete with businesses from other countries because of what they're mandated to do. They just can't do it. We have to build our businesses back up. Now, climate change, some people agree and some people don't. Both groups are very vocal. Some agree, some don't. I consider myself to be somewhat of an environmentalist, believe it or not, but I get tremendous accolades for what I do and the work I do. But we can't afford to be giving billions and billions of dollars away and restricting our businesses when other countries that we're competing against don't have those restrictions.
So when Hillary Clinton says you don't believe in science, and she uses this on the trail.
I don't think most Americans want the kind of divisive and dark change Donald Trump is offering, denying the science of climate change.
And she points back to you saying China is making this up. What do you say?
Well, I'm a total believer in science, but nothing's very conclusive. You had meetings, if you remember, 6, 7 years ago, where the various people in charge of climate change were emailing each other about what a joke this whole thing is. I mean, look, I'm not knocking anything. I'm just saying we have a country that's in trouble. We have $20 trillion in debt, doubled under Obama's presidency, doubled. In a period of 8 years, it doubled. And we can't afford to be doing the kinds of things that he's getting us into because our businesses cannot compete. We need jobs. We have a trade deficit of $800 billion. We can't do that.
I think what's happening out there as the election continues to approach is people are seeing what a clear choice this is, Brett. This is the clearest choice in a national election in my lifetime. And more Americans every day are choosing strength and are choosing to support Donald Trump as the next president.
Last thing while I have both of you here. If you win, what will you do about Paul Ryan, who obviously you had some problems with throughout this campaign? Would you work with him or work to replace him as Speaker?
I will work with Paul Ryan. I'm very disappointed in leadership because I really believe we'd be winning by a lot. That we have to fight against Republicans is absolutely insane and ridiculous, so I'm very disappointed. But I will work with everybody. I'm not just talking about Paul Ryan. I'll get things through.
He's a friend of yours. What do you think about these Republicans who are running away from your ticket?
You're building that up too much. Let me tell you, we have tremendous Republican support.
We do.
But there are a few people at the top that have not been properly supported.
Some of them are coming back now,
and don't
saying
forget,
they will support.
They should be better than they are.
And Brett, this is a movement of the American people. He's won over independents all across this country who are tired of gridlock in Washington. He's won over many Democrats who are tired of liberal policies in our nation's capital and trade deals that are driving jobs out of our country. But make no mistake about it, the overwhelming majority of Republicans are already there. But our message to the rest is if you believe we need to rebuild our military, if you believe we can revive this economy through tax cuts and repealing Obamacare, and if you believe that we need to have strict construction as to the Supreme Court of the United States, our message is it's time for Republicans to come home and elect Donald Trump as the next president of the United States.
Brett,
so that's the close change.
Let me just say, look at Utah. I love the people of Utah. I have great relationships in Utah. Now, if for some reason we lose Utah, that could have a very devastating impact on the overall. Now, what happens? Forgetting about everything else, our country will never be the same because we will not get to pick Supreme Court justices in the mold of Justice Scalia. And we have 20 unbelievable people picked, vetted by Federalist Society and Heritage. These will be great justices of the Supreme Court. Now, and I will pick only from that list. So, because they were a little concerned because I was never a politician, so maybe he'll go out and pick a liberal. Okay, that's not happening. Only from that list I'm going to pick. Only. We're not going outside that list. Now, we could have 2, 3, 4. There's even a scenario where you could have 5 picks this next, probably more than any other president. If the incredible people of Utah, they're incredible people, I know the people of Utah, if they go enough for this character that's running all over the state and we lose the state of Utah, that's devastating because that means we're probably going to lose the Supreme Court of the United States for 60 years. By that time, it won't matter, because at the end of 6 years, we won't have a country left.
We will cover every stop along the way. Mr.
Thank you.
Trump, Governor Pence, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brett.
Next up, the panel on the campaign and what the FBI's big announcement means for the final stretch.